Someone? All right, we're gonna figure it out. We're gonna figure it out. We're gonna find out. We're gonna find out. What's going on, Fernando? Appreciate you coming through. Hey, I appreciate you. Don't worry about it. Don't be sorry. I mean, you did kind of miss the season 1 recap. I just gave a live, cool recap of Foundation season 1. We're about to go into Foundation season 2. If you need to, rewind. If you're new to Foundation, that's your chance to hop in. If you're already a veteran of Foundation, you've seen seasons 1 and 2, you really love season 2, you were here at the right time. Now is the main event. Now is when things pick up. Now is when we get into the good stuff. Let me go ahead and start this show because I'm getting too hyped, right? I'm getting way too hyped over here. Let me go ahead. Man, that's me. Hold on. Let me put this up on the screen because I need to see what I'm saying. Look at that handsome man. Look at that handsome man. Goatee ain't grow that much. Still kind of look the same. Don't really age at all. Hat's kind of cool. Switch to a new hat. All right. Let's see what he's got to say. Let's see what he's got to say. But yeah, I'm going to go through my own video, play it back, and we're going to go into Foundation Season 2. I'm sorry if it's a little cringe from now, right? This was like, I've gotten better since then, right? Like I've improved the setup since then. So forgive me, y'all. Let's go.
The Future Show, Foundation. I'm your host, Anthony, and
what's the sound? Oh, is it me? Oh, yeah, it's me. You guys
I will do my best to be your guide in this far-out show as we're picking up where Season 1 ended with the Cleon dynasty in disarray. Harry, somehow dead but alive, and mother and daughter Gaal and Salvor meeting for the first time. This episode is titled In Selden's Shadow, which is a very fitting title considering that everything that has occurred on this show in the last 100 plus years is a result of the machinations of the mathematician Harry Selden.
Here now. That's right.
This is a great way to highlight the importance of Harry, even hundreds of years after his death, but also as a metaphor for how secretive he was when working on his plans for the future, as our characters try to unravel all of his secrets and also ensure the future of mankind despite the overwhelming odds ahead of them. But first, do me a favor, if you're new here, please consider giving this channel a like and subscribe to keep up with our weekly Foundation analyses and breakdowns, and enable notifications so you're able to watch these videos right after they publish in order to work with us to try to figure out the mystery of Foundation. This episode opens with Harry Selden monologuing to himself in black and white, which is an interesting moment and an interesting visual in which to the death of Brother Dawn of the Cleonic Empire, whom we learn was an altered clone with a number of differences between him and his brothers. One of his differences was the fact that he was an imperfect clone that was colorblind. Harry is talking to himself out loud, seemingly about what he perceives as his failures regarding his great plan. Something interesting is that he mentions how if he only shared his great plan with others, that maybe they could have helped him. And he yells, "You saw what happened to me on the Raven." Harry then says something is happening before he seemingly is dragged away against his will as we hear that familiar voice of Gaal introducing us to this week's episode.
Just real quick, I just wanted to pause it right there real quick because I think it's really important to remember, right? Like we see this Harry just out there. And at first we didn't know who he was. We didn't realize what was going on because we had already seen Harry. He was at the end of season 1. He had met all those people from the first Foundation. We had seen him. But who is this other Harry? This is the second Harry that I started to call Harry White. And one of the things that had to be really processed was that Gaal was in cryo sleep for 138 years, right? So season 1 ends with a time skip of 138 years, and season 2 picks up 138 years after season 1 ends. And 138 years, that time has passed. What we were seeing with Harry in black and white was his consciousness awake for 138 years straight. Gaal slept through it. And that was something that allowed her to keep her sanity. However, Harry, he was conscious for 138 years straight without sleep. I just wanted to point that out.
We then switch to Gaal and Salvor making introductions to each other, with Gaal learning that the embryo that she donated grew to become the woman before her.
Don't pay anything to fix your roof. New York City homeowners can get a free roof while paying zero out of pocket.
Rightfully freaks Gaal all the way out, with Salvor telling her that she's likely even older than her mother at this point. As they exchange information about Salvor's family and how she knew that she was different, they agree to work together, with Salvor agreeing to call her Gaal. Salvor then asks Gaal to tell her about herself, her father, her scars, and more, with Gaal telling her the history about the first foundation and the Empire. We then switch to Brother Day, aka Empire, having sex with Demerzel? This is a very interesting turn of events, considering that the last time we saw Brother Day, he was not too happy with Demerzel's actions and her decision to kill Brother Dawn. But something important to consider is that this is a brand new Brother Day than the one we met in season 1, as 138 years have passed since that time. We don't even get a chance to catch our breath over this new couple, as someone sneaks into Cleon's chambers while they're being intimate and attempts to assassinate the Emperor. Cleon is able to catch a glimpse of someone sneaking in his room right on time when Demerzel urges him to open his eyes. As he does with a little position switch, he puts Demerzel on top, right as the assassin attempts to take out Cleon with the sword and chops off a piece of Demerzel's head instead. Now, real quick, it is very interesting that Demerzel was telling Cleon to open his eyes at that exact moment. I don't know if it's just a coincidence in the writing just yet, but the timing does feel very sus. Like, was she warning him? Anyway.
Okay, so now knowing, see, at the time, I had no idea. But now looking back at it, it's freaking spot on. Because we know now that Demerzel is actually the person orchestrating the assassination attempt, right? Demerzel is the one that set up this whole scene. She wasn't really trying to take Cleon out. However, she was trying to scare the life out of him in order to manipulate things moving forward based off of the plans that he started to create for himself. But yeah, it was like a really cool moment that I had sitting here watching this again, because those little things, those little moments, she's like, open your eyes. And I'm like, why did they write it like that? It's because when we rewatch it, we could catch it. Love this stuff. David Goyer, boy.
Cleon then gets a moment to show up just how capable he is at fighting naked when he throws Demerzel's entire robotic body at his would-be assassin and begins defending himself and fighting back. Cleon shows the man that he's got these hands and he can handle himself when a second assassin walks in with a rifle. Cleon is ever confident and even boasts a bit about his protective aura, when the assassin brings that F around and find out energy and blasts Cleon right in the pompous shoulder, teaching Cleon a valuable lesson that he too can be touched. Cleon continues to fight back, but you can see that my man isn't as cocky as he was a few moments ago. The fight goes back and forth for a bit, with Cleon doing his best to not die, but he gets sliced across the chest with a blade that brings Cleon to his knees. If not for the timely intervention of Demerzel right when the assassin was going to finish the job, the Cleonic Empire might have had a bigger problem. But luckily, Demerzel is able to kill the assassin, with Demerzel taking Cleon to be healed. Now, This scene is interesting as Demerzel is rushing to save Cleon from certain death, but she's also walking around with half a robotic head. And wasn't that being a robot thing supposed to be a secret? I might have missed or forgot something because, season 1 was a while ago, but I thought this was still a secret. Anyway, we have no idea who attempted the assassination, and I can't wait to see what your theories are in the comments.
So, again, the writing, the foreshadowing, that moment with Demerzel just in the nick of time saving Cleon. Like I said, again, that wasn't by accident. That was completely by design. She knew exactly what she was doing. That was 100% intentional. The other part with her walking around to save Cleon, to get him some medical attention, but walking around with half a head. I don't know if she knew she was going to lose her head. I don't know if she planned for that part, but she did know that the Empire has technology to erase people's memories. And that's going to be something that turns into a big plot point moving forward. But we started to see the breadcrumbs of that, just sprinkled throughout the first episode. That's, they're just planting these seeds that are going to grow. I get so excited. I'm sorry, y'all. Let's get back into it.
We then switch back to Harry, who is still in some unknown dark location talking to himself, trying to get a sense of where he is and what's going on. He's not having much luck when he just yells and screams in frustration when his mind seemingly wanders to a childhood memory of himself looking at his shadow while at home with his mother and father. This moment is interesting as Harry is folding paper origami style, but is fascinated with the shadows. His mom seems encouraging of Harry's imagination as he looks at his 3D paper object that has a 2D shadow. But his father seems a little bit more disapproving as he slaps the taste out of Harry for ripping a page out of that book that he bought with his hard-earned money. Harry then realizes, based on...
So, hold on. I didn't notice this before. Later on in the season, there's a moment where Bel Rios and his husband are visiting a spy for the Empire on this planet. And when he has books, Bel and Glaywin lose their minds. They're like, oh my God, is that paper? Is that a book? All the technology they have in their world, but books blow their minds. So when Harry ripped a page out of his father's book, I now understand the exponential value of what just happened. Think of it like this for all my comic book fans. He just ripped the cover off of Spider-Man Amazing Fantasy number 15. He just ripped the page out. Just put a math formula on the back. Rip. Here you go, Dad. Here's your comic. Mother, 5 across. Now I understand. I used to think his dad was just mean. No, Harry deserved that. Thank you. I stand by that take. But yeah, I wanted to just point out because we learn about books later in the season, and he's planting so many different seeds here. Obviously with young Harry, mapping out what he's going to use later with the animals, but also with books.
On his memory, that he is actually within a 4-dimensional space, and that realization allows him to travel within his environment with a lot less restriction than he had before. Harry begins walking around and exploring this big empty space when he notices the presence of someone else in the space with him. Harry then sees that the person who is approaching him is his long-dead life mate, Yana. Harry cries at the sight of his long-lost love and expresses how much he's missed her. He then explains how the galaxy is breaking and something is breaking the future and how he needs to fix it.
Got it. Pay the bills, even me.
Harry has...
So yeah, let's pause real quick. Yana. Now, that was really cool because I don't think we saw Yana in season 1, but we get to see her in season 2. And I love how season 2 really starts to build on the backstory of Harry the way that season 1 built on this backstory of Gaal. We start seeing young Harry. We start seeing him at different stages of life, and we start filling in his upbringing to understand a little bit about the way he operates as an adult. So that little moment was also really cool. Just wanted to point that
she's real and refers to her as
and his wife. So meeting his wife, and we call her his life mate, but it's really the equivalent of a wife. I don't know, this man should have just married her, but basically his wife, Yana, who we're going to see later on because she's one of the key architects of the Prime Radiant.
Figment of his imagination, when she states that she's real. Yana then starts stating some formulas, with Harry realizing that this person in front of him is not the true Yana. She then challenges Harry to figure out who she really is. We then switch back to Gaal, who seems to wake from some sort of dream, but when she wakes up, she's not able to find Salvor. She panics a little and dives into the water to look for her when she sees Salvor's boat returning. They reunite with Salvor explaining that she just went fishing. They then begin talking with Gaal explaining that she sometimes has dreams about the future, with Salvor telling her that she has dreams about the past. And she tries to use this as a moment to find a commonality with her mom. Gaal dismisses it and says it's not the same thing, when Salvor asks Gaal why she hasn't activated the Prime Radiant yet. Gaal just flat out lies and says that she doesn't have the right tools. And Salvor lets Gaal know that she has instincts that let her know when someone is lying, and she calls Gaal out for being dishonest. We then switch to a shot of Terminus with a wonderful voiceover from Gaal talking about how things are getting dire everywhere, with Empire thrashing like a drowning man. We then see a man referred to as Warden, and we hear a weird siren alarm, and we're on Terminus. And we learn that nobody has heard this alarm go off in 138 years. Yeah, this is the first Foundation, now 138 years after we last saw them, with a new generation of people. We figure out that the alarm is a warning that the vault that contains Harry Seldon's other consciousness seems to be reopening. Yeah, his other consciousness. We'll come back to this. The people of the Foundation start gathering around the vault and discussing what the alarm might mean, and the return of Harry Seldon. They theorize that the return of Harry could be a sign that we might be getting closer to the time when they'll go to war with the Empire. We then switch back to Harry Seldon, the other Harry Seldon, as he's speaking to the
So, I'm starting to think about this a little bit more, and I'm going to probably pause and ask y'all if you have, for those of you who have seen season 2, to help me out with this. But the show is giving us non-linear storytelling. So, you know what? Never mind. Answered my own question.
Person impersonating his wife. Harry begins trying to figure out who she really is, and thinks back to the things that his tormentor, Gaal, has mentioned to him in the past, in order to deduce that the person who he's speaking to him is speaking in the same cadence of a poet-mathematician named Calais. After deducing more details about his situation, Harry is able to determine that he's trapped within the Prime Radiant. And we zoom out to see it's true, with Gaal holding the Prime Radiant in her hands. We then switch back to Gaal and Salvor discussing how Gaal trapped Harry inside the Prime Radiant, which confuses the hell out of Salvor because, as far as she knew, she left Harry back on Terminus in the vault. It's at this moment that we learn that there are now 2 Harry Seldons because he's made multiple copies of his consciousness. This deeply disturbs Gaal, and she explains to Salvor that Harry can't be trusted as he sacrifices everyone for his plan. And yeah, she's clearly still salty about losing her lover and Salvor's father, Rach, to Harry's plan. Salvor.
Now, I know that this was wildly confusing at first about the fact that there were 2 Harrys. And it was something that wasn't really immediately clear the first time watching episode 1. But as you go throughout the season and then go back to episode 1, it makes a lot more sense. The first Harry that we see that's in the vault is the Harry who was stabbed on the a spaceship 138 years ago. That's the Harry that is in the vault. However, he made a backup of his mind, and the backup of his mind is also in the Prime Radiant. So essentially, I would say in one sense or the other, Harry Seldon himself did expire. However, Harry, the character in this show, has now been divided into two equally operating Harry Seldons with potentially competing motives based off of one major flaw in the character that is almost like an elephant in the room to everybody who knows him, and that's his ego. He always thinks that he's the smartest person in the room. He has all the right answers. So what does one Harry do when he realizes he's being manipulated by another? And that's something that we get into a little bit later in the show. But I love how this is planted early on and then explodes later.
Counters Gaal and says that she's just more so afraid of Harry's plan rather than Harry himself, and pleads with Gaal that they've been asleep for 138 years and they don't know the state of the galaxy, but they need to find out firsthand. Gaal seems to have agreed as we next see her showing Salvor how to activate the Prime Radiant. Gaal gets a huge look of worry on her face and shows Salvor that although Salvor helped solve the first crisis, that there's now another crisis that is imminent. Harry's original plan accounted for Gaal being on Terminus to solve the issue of the first crisis, but since she wasn't there, they're now in a situation where they've veered off the plan and are now in what looks like a divergent timeline. And the ramifications of Gaal's absence is that there's now a string of crises that never seem to end. We then switch to Brother Day, healing from his assassin.
So that was a little complicated when I first heard that part. So essentially, Harry Seldon was aware of, I think, like a handful of crises that were supposed to impact the world or the galaxy, impact mankind, and cause this great dark period. However, he felt like he could mitigate it if Gaal would found the foundation for him 138 years ago. However, because Raish saved her, put her in a cryopod, and she slept and ended up going back to Synax, and Raish got murked instead, it ruined Harry's plan. However, through that, psychohistory showed him a path forward. However, because of Gaal not being the leader of the first foundation and being alive with this new plan, one, it can lead to a better outcome, but two, it's a much more difficult road with a lot more almost endless number of crises ahead of them. Thanks, Raish. Thank you, Father, kids. Thanks, Dad.
Assassination attempt without anesthesia, because at this point, he doesn't know who to trust. He is deeply disturbed by the attempt on his life and is so paranoid that he even accuses Brother Dawn of orchestrating the assassination attempt. It's not initially clear how much Brother Day thinks that might be true, as he asks Dawn to help him up from his healing bath, and they both return to the scene of the crime in Cleon's bedchambers. Brother Day begins asking his security team questions about whether someone helped the assassin gain access to his bedchambers, and to let them know he means business, he has one of his guards executed on the spot just for hesitating. As the guards leave the room, Day and Dawn begin a discussion about how Day was absolutely afraid to die. Dawn brushes it off that Day's fear is a result of their altered genome. Now, this is very interesting, as this is a completely different Cleon than the one who first discovered that their genomes were altered. This Cleon seems to have an utter fear of his mortality and replacement, as he says, more than once, that he doesn't want them to just unthaw another clone to replace him if he died. The discussion then changes to a debate about whether Brother Day should have children, and
in just the last 7 days, 8,368 men have clicked the link on one of our ads that you've probably...
What? Dawn tries to talk some sense into him about how children would replace them and would end the Cleonic Empire as we know it. This is very surprising, as the whole point of the Empire is to ensure the Cleonic dynasty, and a marriage, along with any offspring, would likely bring a challenge to the status quo and could risk the continuation of a Cleon clone ruling. They talk a bit more and embrace, and then Day breaks the news that he's going to submit Dawn and Dusk to a neural audit and view their memories. This is because Day suspects that Dawn and Dusk are both threatened by Day's impending marriage, as they should be, and Brother Day is clearly paranoid. And still, this development is shocking. The Cleons are at odds with one another. I mean, we saw hints of this with their predecessors last season, but this is something completely different, as it feels like they are not in unison the same way as their predecessors were. Could Dusk or Dawn have something to do with the attempt on Day's life? Maybe. We then switch to Demerzel sitting in front of a mirror performing repairs on her sliced head. She seems a lot better than when we last saw her. Cleon walks in to check on her, and she assures that she's fine since her consciousness is actually decentralized, so this is just a shell. Cleon asks if...
Now, man, that line there, I feel, is going to be very important. And it feels like another one of those seeds that David Gloyer is planting to develop later. But he mentioned how Demerzel is decentralized. And I think that this is a result of when she was imprisoned, right? She was imprisoned for hundreds, thousands of years, whatever. And her consciousness was stuck in her body. I think that she developed a way to decentralize her consciousness so she could never be stuck in her body again. However, now it sounds like Demerzel is basically Skynet, right? She's in the net, she's in the web. She's not one machine, she's a bunch of machines. So I feel like that they planted that seed for us now. And I still think that this is something that could come up in season 3. As we revisit Demerzel, who's a much different Demerzel. Like, I don't want to spoil what happens in season 3. I am going through some of it now. But she continues on this trajectory of growth, and we're going to see something different with her. So I like how they start to plant these seeds here. Not only did she decentralize based off of her experiences being trapped, just think about how she must have evolved by the time we've seen her in season 3. What other precautions or protections has she put in place for herself based off of her experiences since that time? Let's get into it.
What they were doing was indecent, with Demerzel brushing it off and saying that it's not if it's given freely. This is a very brief moment, but a very, very interesting one, as this Cleon is going to Demerzel for reassurance in his decisions, almost as if he were checking for her approval. She then asks Cleon for some privacy as she finishes repairs on the missing half of her head. We then switch to a beautiful shot of space and a cool looking spaceship. On the ship, we see 2 women, one being Queen Sareth, talking about how the rings surrounding the planet are beautiful, and they start comparing them with the frills around the neck of a lizard and how a lizard will use them for intimidation. Sareth is a little bit more glass half empty on this and mentions that lizards usually show their frills when they're afraid. We then switch to Brother Day and Brother Dusk debating the fact that Brother Day was sleeping with Demerzel. Brother Dusk seems really bothered by the news, but Brother Day actually tells us that Demerzel was actually the one who initiated. He also mentions how he was lucky she was there since his protective aura failed him when the assassins tried to take him out. He then mentions how he thinks someone tampered with it, and Dusk advises him to open an investigation. But I couldn't help but notice the look on Dusk's face when discussing this. Dusk has always seemed a bit harder to read than the others, but the blank expression on his face when discussing the attempt on Brother Day's life is very sus. They then begin discussing Brother Day's engagement to Queen Sareth. Dusk mentions how she brought
So we're starting to see the fractures between dawn, day, and dusk, and I really like how they continued that storyline from season 1 into season 2, because it is going to be something we touch on when we get to season 3.
such a large amount of people with her, and it could have been an opportunity to attempt the assassination herself. But in the same breath, he mentions how it would be better for her if she waited until after the marriage to do it. They continue talking, with Brother Day still expressing concern about trying to maintain the Cleonic dynasty the way that they have, and Dawn and Dusk seem to be at odds with each other over Brother Day's thinking and decisions. We then switch back to Gaal and Salvor, thinking about a way to escape the planet and fix Salvor's ship. They come up with a plan to swim down to Salvor's ship, which crash-landed underwater. They come up with a strategy, with Gaal offering to share oxygen with Salvor once they're on the ship. We get a pretty tense sequence of underwater events that ultimately ends in their success at fixing Salvor's ship and getting it to raise to the surface. They celebrate their success and begin talking about how weird things are, and Gaal also reminds her that Salvor's existence is an absolute shock to her, and a development that she didn't get a chance to prepare for. They talk a bit more and actually bond, at least a little bit, as mother and daughter, and also as the last Synaxians. We then switch back to Trantor and into the royal throne room of Empire. Cleon the 17th welcomes his guest, Queen Sareth I. They exchange pleasantries and gifts. Sareth receives her gift, and I can't help but notice how sassy she gets with Empire. Her gift is a brass statue of Trantor and the rings she was criticizing earlier around them. She also criticizes that the Empire is surely larger than Trantor, and gets a little cheeky with Cleon in front of a large audience. I can't help but feel the audacity of her statement. She's saying this in front of other people? Like, my man Cleon has killed for a hell of a lot less, so my heart stopped when Sarah started popping off. This whole moment is funny, but scary, but funny, and gets interrupted when Demerzel comes telling Cleon that she needs to speak with him about an urgent matter, and it can't be said in front of the guests. We then switch to Demerzel debriefing Cleon on the fact that they were able to find the body of Commander Dorwin floating in space, possessing Imperial nanites. Dorwin, as we know, was sent to the Outer Reach by Cleon the 14th to investigate the comms buoy that went dark on Terminus. We know what happened on Terminus and how the Foundationers were at war, solved the war, aka the first crisis, and faked the Mega Flare to be able to continue work on the Foundation without the attention of the Empire. We find out that Dorwin left a message in a neural implant for the Empire that they were able to retrieve and play back. This rocks Empire as they try to understand the gravity of the oversight of their predecessors. Demerzel tells them that there was no Mega Flare, and also talks about how there's a galactic alliance on the edges of space that we're previously unaware of. It doesn't take long for Brother Day to realize that this is the result of the Foundation created by Harry Seldon. Brother Dusk advises that they crush them immediately. Demerzel suggests that they instead observe just how far their influence extends. Brother Day agrees, but something interesting is the rumors that the Foundation has wizards that can fly and all this stuff, and that's a little bit surprising. Brother Dusk tells Day that he needs to get his house in order. We then switch back to Harry Seldon, the one that's trapped in the Prime Radiant, when he realizes that the person he's speaking to is the Prime Radiant. Harry asks the Prime Radiant what is its goal, and the Prime Radiant answers that she has a vested interest in humanity's destiny. But Harry's bothered that not in its survival, so it's not the same thing. The Prime Radiant then speaks with Harry, explaining that she wants to help him escape his prison. Harry comes to the realization that he can escape by changing his way of thinking from 4D to 2D. The Radiant wishes him luck and tells him that she will explain more and continue this conversation if he can meet her/it on Una's world. He takes the words of encouragement and proceeds to walk out of the door that appeared in front of him. We then switch back to Gaal and Salvor, who are both in a bit of a situation and are...
So, that whole conversation with Kylie has been something that stuck with me for a while, because we later learned that Kylie is actually, at least it seems like, a manifestation of the prime radiant itself, as if it was a consciousness. And the prime radiant, Kylie, then becomes an additional player in all of this, because we start to wonder, all right, did Kylie make this copy of Harry Seldon? Was there, I mean, there was always a plan for a second foundation, right? Or did Kylie create a copy of Harry and implant this idea of a second foundation, which is why the first Harry had no idea about it? Maybe his thought was always to bring Gaal to Terminus, create foundation, stop the 2 or 3 crises that he knew that she could lead them through, with his consciousness being there to back her up. Maybe that was his plan. So now it feels like Kylie is an additional player who is the being itself that set us on this altered trajectory path outside of Harry's plan. It gets dense, but it gets good.
Stuck, unable to get the ship to operate. Salvor urges Gaal to free Harry from the Prime Radiant to help them figure out what's wrong with the ship. But it looks like he's able to free himself and appears on the ship. And it's time Harry and Gaal had a reckoning. And end credits. Wow. What a wonderful return of this show. Yo, I had to admit that I was late to get on board with Foundation, but I am
But yeah, there we go. That is Foundation Season 2, Episode 1. It does so much to plant the seeds. It does so much to set us on the path forward to greatness. It plants so many small things, like we already revisited. We started to notice the cracks in the Cleonic dynasty. The 3 dawn, day, and dusk drifting in different directions, wants, desires, personalities, due to some genetic drifting. We've seen Harry Seldon's plan go off course, and some lack of clarity as to who's the instigator of it. We see this mother and daughter situation that couldn't possibly make sense, but we love it anyway, and it turns into heartache. We meet these mind readers, these matter movers, these mentalics of Ignis, and more later in the season. I am really curious as to what else we're going to discover as we rewatch this. So if you're watching this on a replay and if you enjoyed this video, do me a favor, please do me a favor, please hit that like button, please. I'm telling you, this is going to help not only for you to see my video on your homepage the next time we do episode 2, but it's going to help my channel to grow even in 2025, because these are the things that YouTube still cares about. Please hit that like button, and if you're new here and you want to catch us every week as we break down Foundation Season 3, make sure you subscribe. Maybe even join our memberships, where you're going to get some more behind the scenes footage and videos from me every week leading up to that release. Anyway, before I let you guys go, psych,